to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in his comments about St Patrick's Day? My thoughts, and I'm sure those across the whole of the House, are with the family and friends of Sarah Everard, who will be suffering unspeakable grief. There are 5 words that will stick with us for a very long time. She was just walking home. Sometimes a tragedy is so shocking it demands both justice and change. The Stephen Lawrence case showed the poison of structural and institutional racism. The James Bolger case made us question the nature of our society and the safety of our children. Now the awful events of the last week have lifted a veil on the epidemic of violence against women and girls. This must also be a watershed moment to change how we as a society treat women and girls and how we prevent and end sexual violence and harassment. I believe that if we work together, we can achieve that. And the questions I ask today are in that spirit. So first, does the Prime Minister agree that this must be a turning point in how we tackle violence against women and girls?
Mr Speaker, yes I do, and I associate myself fully with the remarks that the right honourable gentleman has made about the appalling murder of Sarah Everard, and I'm sure that those emotions are shared in this House and around the country. And that event has triggered a reaction that I believe is wholly justified and understandable. And of course, we in government are doing everything that we can. We're investing in the Crown Prosecution Service, trying to speed up the law. We're changing the law on domestic violence and many, many other things. But I think that he is right, frankly, that unless and until we have a change in our culture that acknowledges and understands that women currently do not feel they are being heard, we will not fix this problem. And that is what we must do. We need a cultural and social change in attitudes to redress the balance, Mr Speaker, and that is what I believe all politicians must now work together to achieve.
Keir Starmer.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for that answer? In that spirit, can I turn to the practical challenges we face if we are collectively to rise to this moment? The first challenge, Mr Speaker, is that many, many women and girls feel unsafe on our streets, particularly at night. What's needed is legal protection, and that's why we've called for a specific new law on street harassment and also for toughening the law on stalking. Both, I think, are absolutely vital if we're going to make meaningful change in the everyday experiences of women and girls. So can the Prime Minister commit to take both of these measures forward?
Mr Speaker, we're always happy to look at new proposals. What we're already doing is introducing tougher sanctions on stalkers, or that's already been brought in, and we're bringing in new measures to make the streets safer. Of course, that's the right thing to do, Mr Speaker. Last night there was a bill before the House on police crime and sentencing, which did a lot to protect women and girls, which did a lot to protect women and girls, and it would have been good in a cross-party way, Mr Speaker, to have had the support of the opposition.
Keir Starmer.
Mr Speaker, I'll come to last night's bill later, but it did say a lot more about protecting statues than it did about protecting women. But let me, if I may, given the gravity of the situation, continue in the spirit so far. And I thank the Prime Minister for his answer. The next challenge, practical challenge, is that many, many women and girls who are subjected to sexual violence do not feel confident to come forward and report what has happened to them. 9 out of 10 don't do so. We have to improve the support that's provided for victims. The Victims Commissioner published a report last month with 32 recommendations about this. This week, Labour produced a detailed survivor support plan. And 5 years ago, I introduced a private member's bill with cross-party support for a victims' law to give legally enforceable rights to victims. The Shadow Victims Minister, my honourable friend from Hove, has tabled a similar victims' bill that's before Parliament now. It's ready to go. All it needs is political will to act. So will the Prime Minister commit now not just to the idea of a victims' law, which I think he does support, but to a tight timetable, ideally 6 months or so, to actually implement such a law?
Prime Minister.
As I say, Mr. Speaker, we're very happy to look at new proposals from all sides of the House on this issue, and that's why we're conducting an end-to-end review of the law on rape and how it works, and investing in the criminal justice system to speed up cases and give women and girls the confidence that they need. And I think that the point he makes about victims and their need to feel confident in coming forward is absolutely right, and that's why we've put £100 million so far into the services for dealing with violence against women and girls, particularly independent domestic violence advisors, independent sexual violence advisors, Mr. Speaker. I don't pretend that these are the entire solution. They are part of the solution, but it is also vital, Mr. Speaker, that we have long-term cultural, societal change to deal with this issue.
Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I agree with the Prime Minister on that last point. Can I gently remind him that for 10 years this government has been promising a victims' law? I think it's been in his party's last 3 manifestos. It still hasn't materialised. We don't, Prime Minister, need more reviews, consultation strategies. The conversations our Shadow Minister is having with government, constructive conversations, are exactly the same conversations as I had 5 years ago, constructive conversations. We just need now to get on with it. But let me press on with the practical challenges, because the next challenge is this, that for many, many women and girls who do come forward to report sexual violence, no criminal charges are brought. Only 1.5% of rapes reported to the police lead to a prosecution. Put the other way, 98.5% of reported rapes don't lead to a prosecution. That's a shocking statistic. I do appreciate that efforts are being made to improve the situation. But can the Prime Minister tell us what is he going to do about this, not in a few years' time, not next year, but now?
Prime Minister.
He's entirely right, Mr. Speaker, in the sense that I agree with him. One of the first things I said when I became Prime Minister was that I believed that the prosecution rates for rape were a disgrace in this country, and we need to sort it out. And yes, that's why we're investing in confidence-building measures such as ISVAs and IDVAs, and investing in the CPS, and trying to speed up the process of the law to give people the confidence their cases will be heard in due time. But we're also doing what we can to toughen the penalties for those men, and I'm afraid it is overwhelmingly men, who commit these crimes. And I think it would have been a good thing if last night the whole House could have voted for tougher sentences for those who commit sexual and violence offences, and stop people, Mr. Speaker, from being released early. And in that collegiate spirit, I would ask him to work together with us.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, I was Director of Public Prosecution for 5 years and spent every day prosecuting serious crime, including terrorism, sexual violence and rape. So I really don't need lectures about how to enforce the criminal law. But walking on through the system, as many women and girls have to do, and facing up to the challenges that we need to face up to as a House, the next challenge is the point the Prime Minister just referenced, and that's the sentences for rape and sexual violence, because they need to be toughened. Let me give the House 3 examples. John Patrick, convicted of raping a 13-year-old girl, he received a 7-year sentence. Orlando and Constanzo, convicted of raping a woman in a nightclub, they received a 7.5-year sentence. James Reeve, convicted of raping a 7-year-old girl, he received a 9-year sentence. Does the Prime Minister agree we need urgently to look at this and to toughen sentences for rape and serious sexual violence?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if there was a bill going through the House of Commons which did exactly that? Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if there were measures to defend women and girls from violent and sex criminals? Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if there was a bill before the House to have tougher sentences for child murderers and tougher punishments for sex offenders? That, I think, would be a fine thing, Mr. Speaker. As it happens, as it happens, there is such a bill before the House. I think it would be a great thing if the right honourable gentleman actually had voted for it. He still has time. This bill is still before the House. He can lift his opposition. They actually voted against it, Mr. Speaker, on a 3-line whip, and I think it was crazy.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, he mentions the bill last night. That provided for longer maximum sentences for damaging a memorial than the sentences imposed in the 3 cases of rape I've referred the House to. All of those sentences less than 10 years. I thank the Prime Minister for providing me with the best examples of why the priorities in his bill were so wrong. And nothing in that bill would have increased the length of sentence in any of those rape cases. Nothing in that bill. But let me try to return to the constructive spirit, because I think that is demanded of all of us. If this House came together on the points raised today, and there's been agreement across the dispatch boxes, it would make a real difference to victims of crime. This week, Labour published a 10-point plan. We published a victims' law. In coming days, we're going to publish amendments in relation to the criminal justice system to make it work better. Now, I don't expect the Prime Minister to agree with all of this. And frankly, I don't care if this becomes a government bill or Conservative legislation. All I care about is whether we make progress. So will the Prime Minister meet me, the Shadow Home Secretary, the honourable member for Birmingham Yardley and victims groups who've spent many years campaigning on this, so that we can really and truly make this a turning point?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid that he does, and I'm grateful to him for the collegiate speech, the way in which he's addressing this, and the way in which he's reaching out across the chamber. And I think that's entirely right in the circumstances. But I do think that he should not misrepresent what the bill was trying to do. The average sentence for rape is already 9 years, 9 months, as he knows full well. The maximum sentence is already life. What we were trying to do is stiffen the sentences for a variety of offences to protect women and girls and others. And that is entirely the right thing to do, Mr. Speaker. And we will go on with our agenda, delivering on the people's priorities, rolling out more police, 7,000 we have already, investing in ISVAs and IDVAs, and doing our utmost to accelerate the processes, the grinding processes of the criminal justice system, which, as he rightly says, are such a deterrent to women in coming forward to complain as they rightly should. But until we sort out that fundamental problem, until women feel that they are being heard and their voices are being heard and their complaints are being addressed by society, we will not fix this problem. And I warmly welcome what he suggests about wanting to fix it together, and I hope that in that spirit he can bring himself to vote for the tougher sentences that we've set out.